It's always quiet when I first start my shift. The coffee shop, Brew, settles into its early evening rhythm. The soft hum of the espresso machines fills the background, and the familiar smell of freshly ground beans rises into the air, grounding me in a sense of comfort. The wooden tables, worn down from years of use, are scattered with customers hunched over laptops, reading books, or simply enjoying their evening coffee. The lights are dimmed just enough to create a warm, golden atmosphere, casting gentle shadows across the walls. There's always a light jazz track playing in the background, adding to the sense of calm that fills the space. I don't mind it here. In fact, I rather enjoy the peace it brings. It's the one place where I feel like I can be part of something without really engaging too much. I'm Ethan, a barista working the late shift. I'm quiet, observant, and more often than not, lost in my own thoughts. I don't mind the solitude. It's easier that way. I get to watch people, listen to their conversations, and jot down little things that catch my attention. I have a habit of sketching them too, mostly when I'm working alone. People come and go, and I find a strange sense of solace in observing them without them ever noticing. Tonight, like most nights, I begin the shift by setting up, refilling the coffee beans, wiping down the counters, and making sure everything is in order before the evening rush. It's almost always the same. The regulars come in. Some grab a coffee and settle down with their work, while others chat with the baristas. But tonight, I feel something different in the air. There's an odd stillness, almost like the calm before a storm. The shop is more crowded than usual, and I start to feel the pressure of managing the flow of customers. But as the night drags on, something catches my eye. He arrives at 9:30 p.m., as he always does. I've seen him before. He's a tall, thin man, probably in his late 40s, with deep-set, sunken eyes and dark circles underneath them. His hair is graying and unkempt, almost like he doesn't care to take care of it. His clothes are always the same. A long black coat, despite the warm weather outside. It's almost as if he's trying to blend in with the shadows. He doesn't speak much, but he always orders the same drink. A black coffee with no cream or sugar, and always sits at the same table in the farthest corner of the shop. I don't know why, but something about the way he sits there, alone, in the dim light, makes him seem out of place, like he's part of the background, but somehow isn't supposed to be here. He always seems to be writing in a small, leather-bound notebook. I've never seen him use his phone, never seen him engage with anyone around him. He's just there, watching, observing. I can't help but notice how his eyes sometimes flicker around the shop, scanning the other customers and the staff. It's unnerving, like he's studying us, trying to figure us out. He never tips, never finishes his coffee, and always leaves before the closing hour. Most people would consider him just another regular, but there's something in the way he moves, in the way he holds that notebook, that doesn't sit right with me. The shop's quiet hum is interrupted by his usual entrance. I don't make much of it at first, but as the night stretches on, my mind can't seem to let go of him. There's a gnawing feeling in the back of my head, like I should be paying more attention to him, like something's wrong. Around 11:45 p.m., I'm finishing up the last of my work. The last few customers are starting to head out, and the shop is almost empty. That's when it happens. The man, as usual, finishes his coffee and gets up to leave. But this time, he doesn't take his notebook with him. He leaves it on the table. I'm cleaning up, gathering the dirty cups and plates, when I notice the leather-bound notebook sitting there. The man's gone, walking out the door without it. I don't know why, but I feel compelled to pick it up. I can't resist. It's as though I need to see what's inside. At first, I hesitate. It feels wrong. But then curiosity wins. I flip it open, and what I find inside makes my stomach drop. It's not just a regular notebook. It's a detailed record of every employee at the shop. Names, work schedules, home addresses, and personal information. The man had written down things that no one should know: who walked home at night, who took the bus, who lived alone. He even had notes about the things we said, the little details about our routines. It was all there, neatly written in his strange, spidery handwriting. I stand frozen, the weight of the notebook in my hands. I can't believe what I'm seeing. How could he know all this? Why would he keep track of us like this? My blood runs cold, and I feel the fear creep up my spine. He had been watching us, watching me. I don't know how long I stood there staring at the pages, but when the first sound of the door opening makes me jump, I know I have to act fast. I call my manager immediately, and within minutes the staff gathers around the table. We're all reading the notes, trying to make sense of what we're seeing. It's like we've stumbled upon something we weren't supposed to find. "Why would he need all this information?" one of my coworkers whispers, his voice shaking. The question hangs in the air like a dark cloud. None of us can answer it. After a quick discussion, we agree to call the police. We can't ignore it. This man, whoever he is, knows too much. And yet, the next night, he doesn't show up. It's like he knew we had found his secret, like he had planned for us to see it. But then things get worse. At 1:30 a.m., Marcus, one of the bigger guys on the team, steps outside to deliver a late-night order. I see him leave, but then I see something else. A movement in the shadows by the dumpsters outside. The man. He's standing there, lurking in the dark, waiting. And before Marcus can even react, the man lunges at him, knife in hand. I hear the scream, the struggle, the sound of Marcus's body slamming against the ground. I don't know what to do. My heart is pounding in my ears as I watch through the window. Marcus fights back, using his strength to break free. He shoves the man away, blood dripping from a deep cut on his arm. The man retreats, and Marcus stumbles back toward the shop, barely able to keep himself upright. I lock the door immediately and call 911, panic setting in. Outside, I hear the man's footsteps fading into the night, disappearing before the police can arrive. When the officers show up, they search the area, but there's no sign of the man. Nothing. Just the sound of sirens and the wind. In the days that follow, the fear doesn't fade. The police have no leads. The man has vanished. The notebook is taken as evidence, but there are no fingerprints, no identification, no way to track him down. It's like he was never there. The coffee shop installs cameras, adds stronger locks, and makes sure someone's always on the lookout. But no one talks about the man. No one knows where he's gone, or if he'll ever come back. But sometimes in the silence of the night, when I'm closing up and everyone else is gone, I feel like I'm being watched. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks on me. But I swear, sometimes, I hear the faintest scratch of a pen on paper. I know he's out there, somewhere. I've always enjoyed my time at Everbean Coffee House. It's a quaint, cozy place tucked between office buildings, offering the perfect escape from the busy workday. The warm, dim lighting and the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee always made it feel like a second home. I'd come in almost every evening after work, order my caramel mocha latte, and sit by the window with my laptop. It was my little ritual, a peaceful hour before heading home to unwind after a day filled with meetings and deadlines. I'm Emily Carter, 30, a marketing analyst by day. I work a demanding job at a corporate firm, which often leaves me feeling drained by the end of the week. But I've always found solace in these quiet places. Everbean was my favorite. I liked watching the world go by from the large windows, seeing the people bustle outside while I could enjoy the calm inside. There was something comforting about the soft jazz that played in the background and the sound of the espresso machine steaming milk. Most of the time, I worked on client presentations or just read. I'd get lost in the pages, sipping on my drink, enjoying the brief moments of solitude. For the past 3 years, this routine had been my escape. The staff at Everbean knew me by name. Jake, the barista who usually worked evenings, would always greet me with a smile, remembering my order before I even said a word. It was perfect, familiar, and safe. Until he started working there. It was around 2 months ago when Zane first appeared. Zane was a new hire. He was in his mid-30s, lean, but with an almost unsettling energy about him. His appearance was scruffy, unkempt. His stubble looked like he hadn't shaved in days, and his dark circles made him look tired, even exhausted. His apron was always slightly stained, and he moved with a sense of urgency, like he had something to prove. He was polite enough, but something about him made me feel uneasy. At first, I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just my imagination. But I started noticing that Zane would linger near my table after handing me my coffee. He would stand there, pretending to clean, but I could feel his eyes on me. It wasn't like the casual glances from other people. It was different. It felt like he was watching, studying me, noticing every small detail. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself that I was being paranoid. But as the days went by, it only got worse. It wasn't just the lingering glances. It was how he began to hover around when Jake wasn't working. Jake had been the one who usually served me, but one evening, Zane stepped in to bring me my usual drink. He handed it to me with a strange, almost knowing smile, as if he was too familiar with me, even though we had never spoken, outside of the usual pleasantries. The weird part was, I didn't feel like he was just being friendly. There was something off about the way he looked at me, something unsettling in his expression. It wasn't normal. Then came the day when I realized how bad it had gotten. On the 5th day, when I was about to leave, I turned toward the door. As I stepped outside, I glanced back, and I saw Zane standing by the window, his eyes locked onto me. His gaze didn't waver, even as I got into my car and drove away. The weird thing was, it didn't feel like the casual glance of someone watching the street. It felt targeted, like I was the one being watched, not just anyone passing by. I tried to ignore it at first, but something about it kept gnawing at me. I started to feel uneasy, like I was being tracked, followed even. I kept thinking about his eyes, always on me. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to talk to the manager. That night, I pulled the manager aside and explained the situation. I told him about Zane's behavior, how he seemed to be watching me, how uncomfortable it made me. The manager listened carefully and promised he'd speak to Zane about it. When Zane came in the next day, the manager called him into the office. I overheard part of the conversation. Zane seemed calm, almost too calm. He explained that he was just working hard and that maybe I had misunderstood his intentions. He assured the manager that he wasn't doing anything inappropriate, but after that, his behavior didn't stop. If anything, it grew bolder. He would linger even longer, standing at the counter, staring at me, his gaze never leaving me until I left. He'd ask about my work, about my day, and every time he spoke, it felt like he was fishing for information. Days later, I started feeling off. I couldn't explain it at first, but I felt lightheaded. The dizziness started after I drank my coffee, and it didn't stop. I was tired, despite sleeping all night, and I felt nauseous. My vision blurred, and I couldn't concentrate on my work. The feeling got worse, and I started to panic. I didn't know what was happening to me, so I decided to visit the hospital. The doctor ran a few tests, and when he came back with the results, he was serious. "Miss Carter," he said, "have you been using any recreational drugs or medications?" I shook my head in confusion. No, of course not. Why? The doctor looked at me with a raised eyebrow. There are traces of sedatives in your system. My mind raced. Sedatives? I repeated, my throat tightening. That's when it hit me. The only thing I consumed every day, without fail, was coffee. The coffee at Everbean. The realization made my blood run cold. I didn't want to believe it, but there was no other explanation. Zane. It had to be him. He was the one making me sick, slipping something into my drinks. I immediately called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived at Everbean Coffee House, but when they entered, Zane was already gone. The security footage revealed the truth. Zane had slipped out the back exit just minutes before the police arrived. They searched the area, but there was no sign of him. The worst part came when the police checked his background. Zane's entire identity was fake. The name, the address, the references on his job application. It was all fabricated. The address he gave? It was a lie. The place was occupied by an elderly couple who had never heard of him. It was as if Zane didn't exist.